There we go. I had the dial of death on the Mac. Not telling me if we're live. Welcome to the Tuesday night, evening edition, depending on where you're watching from, of What the Heck's Going On in the Real Estate Market. I am your host, Jen Sylvester, chiming here from good old Massachusetts in the Northeast, and talking about all things what's happening in the real estate market this week. And this week I'm doing something a little different. We're going to do a kind of a mashup of things, because I had a couple things that I wanted to talk about, and I had three things. And I had this idea: lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. So those that know that's a Wizard of Oz reference, hence the thumbnail. And but we're going to talk about, I'm going to revisit a story that I actually covered about a month ago. And I'm going to talk about it because it's hit close to home, in my own office, a scam. So we're going to talk about that, and I've got a special guest to talk about it. And then we're going to dig into some commission update information. So I dropped a video last week about, the updates on all the changes with commissions and whatnot. I dropped that last week or the week before. And an agent reached out to me, and I will not say who that agent is, unhappy with my presentation. And I wanted to share this information with you because I think it's worth a conversation, and potentially a warning, something you can learn from and look out for when you're out interviewing your agents. So hopefully that'll be of value. And then we're going to dig into what the heck's going on in the housing market. I've got an article here of the market mayhem. Are we starting to look like 2008? And what are the warning signs? And is that a credible, if that's a credible reference? So we're gonna get this party started, and I'm gonna bring on my guest. So my guest is actually, he's never been on this show before. I know he's in the green room. He's probably very nervous. Don't worry, nothing to be nervous about there, my friend. I'm just kidding. He's not. Welcome to the show, the broker that owns my office, Mr. Scott Jones Jr. How you doing there, my friend?
Hey, Jen, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. You've got a round of applause, too?
Yes, sir. Hey, we don't mess around here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super, super, super excited to have you jump in on the conversation because of this first thing that I wanted to talk about. And this is something that I talked about a month ago. So I'm going to bring up the article. And so this popped up May 12th in Colorado. I featured on my live stream, and it was about a real estate agent got tricked into, in a scam attempt. And this couple was trying to buy some land. They found a plot of land in Colorado. They contacted the agent, so on and so forth. The agent did their due diligence, or what they thought they did, with their due diligence, only to find out that when it went through the title company picked up on a few clues, had some intuition, and they found out that it wasn't legitimate. And they almost handed $75,000 straight to a scammer. And coincidentally, I came up with another article popped up literally last Thursday that happened in New Hampshire. So, similar type of situation, where, they say own a piece of land in northern New Hampshire where they had been planning to build their retirement home. They work hard, save to, to do this. They worked hard and saved to do this for our future and our dreams, she said. But that dream was nearly shattered when their piece of land in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, was nearly sold out from under them. The idea that someone can crash it all down in a hurry is pretty upsetting, Lori added. Realtors reached out to the couple when they were contacted by someone else looking to sell the property. One realtor, Tyler Costa, was immediately suspicious when the person claiming to be Joe Malafont, the owner, asked him to communicate on the encrypted chat platform WhatsApp. That's a red flag.
Definitely a red flag right there.
Yep, and they said they need a quick sale, and Costa said that was just very weird. It made it seem like it was a very urgent matter. Joe Malafont said the scammer told the realtor the wife is sick and they needed a quick sale to get some cash to pay for treatments, pulling at the old heartstrings. Scammer told Costa he was living in Austin, Texas, but Costa was able to track down the scammer's communications back to a computer in India. Lori said that the scammer went so far as to contact her employer to try to reroute her pay. As the Malafonts dove deeper, they discovered the scammer had fake documents, including driver's licenses with real ID logos. He said the registry of motor vehicles told them that if someone showed up with legitimate looking documents, the registry would be obligated to process it. The true owner of the property won't necessarily find out the property has been sold out from under them until they received notification of sale. Super, super scary. This is she said her office had seen several similar cases in New Hampshire, and the easiest targets are properties are property that may the easiest targets. Try again. Our property may be in more remote parts of the state. So this part I'm going to get into in a second, how to protect yourself, how to protect your property. But Scott, Mr. Scotty, you sent out an email to the office. Literally, what was that? Yesterday or Friday or something?
I think it was the end of last week. Yeah, I think it was Friday. Yep.
And you said that this happened or is happening or just happened in our office. So share the story.
Sure.
About what happened.
So actually, Jen, it happened in 2 of our offices. So
it
happened.
My goodness.
So after I sent out the initial communication, somebody from one of the other offices reached out and said, "I think I'm dealing with that as we speak." So it's basically what the article said is kind of how it plays out. In these 2 cases in our office, the seller of the land reached out via email first. So they had a property in what I forget the actual town that it was in, or the towns it was in. But they reach out saying, "I have a property for sale. Are you interested in helping me sell it?" And it's all the communication, though. One of the red flags is most of the communication is done by either email, text message, or in the case of the article that you read was on WhatsApp.
Yep.
My guess is the reason being is if you called them on the phone, maybe the accent would give it away if they're in India or overseas somewhere else. So
Yep.
they try to stick to, communications via email or text message. And then what I will say though is they're pretty detailed. The person that was, I believe it was Middleton, Massachusetts, that one of the people said that they had land in. They knew the address of the home address of the owner. They had his name, his date of birth, all that stuff they were willing to share with our agent who was kind of taking notes on it. So it's a pretty believable scam. It's a pretty believable scam. These people are pretty creative and pretty on it as far as the scam goes. It's scary. It's
well, I
scary.
mean, it seems like every other day we're getting a notice from another credit card company saying that your data has been compromised, right? And that make sure you watch your credit cards, make sure you watch your credit report and all this kind of stuff to to see if if there's been any activity. And these hackers have gotten more and more sophisticated. I guess the big question is like so what were the I mean was there was how did what were the clues to be that they realized that this thing
So
stinks. Something stinks in Denmark.
I think the first big clue was that they couldn't get the person on the phone. They
Yep.
tried to get the person on the phone, the seller, air quotes seller, on the phone, and couldn't get them on the phone. And there was always an excuse as to why they couldn't come to the phone or they couldn't speak on the phone. They were, buried at work or if they were a doctor walking into a surgery or something creative like that, right? So that was the first red flag. The second red flag is that they had they were not really concerned about the asking price for the property. They kind of just went with whatever the agent said as far as what the property's worth. No questions as to like how'd you come up with this? These are the comps. And most people, when they sell their home, they have an idea of what they think it's worth. They
Yep.
communicate that to us. We kind of talk about why it may be accurate or not. So there was none of that. It was kind of just like, yeah, just sell it. And then the third part was, we need to sell this very quickly. We just need to get it on the market like tomorrow. Again, kind of odd in our industry. Not many people call and be like, I need to sell my home tomorrow. So I think those are
Did
probably the three main things.
did did you talk to anybody, any like attorneys or anything that had words of of ways that home sellers could protect themselves if they have either land. Land is easy. There's no,
Mm.
you don't have to worry about occupants. You don't have to worry about somebody coming home. You don't have to worry about it. Is it a second home that all of a sudden people will be there, or people are monitoring that a little bit more? Land gets lost in the sauce, especially if you have parcels of land that have been passed down from generation to generation, right? And it's sitting there, and a lot of people just, they forget about it, right? The lot that your great grandfather had, and we got to get together and we got to do something with it, but not today because we're busy or whatever. But were there any words of advice that you were given by attorneys or otherwise, um, for how people can protect themselves?
So I didn't get that far, Jen, to be totally honest with
Okay.
you. Just both kind of transpired at the end of last week. It's been a busy few days. I have not had the opportunity to speak with an attorney about, about that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, I,
So, and we have, actually, this kind of stuff has come up a couple times. I had an article, about a month and a half ago or so, 5 weeks ago, where an agent in Chicago had, put together a team of. She was on the wrong side of the law. She was, fraudulently selling property. She was stealing property, out from underneath. They're targeting elderly folks, and one of the ways that you can, protect yourself from that is, doing like a title lock, subscription, or just, monitoring and whatnot. But this article that from New Hampshire that popped up last week, um, actually made a good recommendation. It says how to protect your property. It says if you want to protect yourself from deed fraud, the New Hampshire Attorney General suggests setting up Google alerts for your own address. You should then get a notification if someone posts a fraudulent listing for your property online. Now, if those watching, if you don't know how to do this, it is very easy. Literally go on Google and Google how to set up a Google alert, and it'll walk you, it's like 3 steps, to put your address in. And what that will do, and we saw this, gosh, I remember seeing this type of a situation 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe, with Craigslist, right? When Craigslist came out, and uh, there was an issue. I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was an issue with uh, people taking properties that were for sale and posting rental listings off those properties and
I
collecting down
remember. I
payments,
remember
hold
that. I
right,
remember
so
that
that
vividly. Yeah.
people were rent available apartments across the board have been hard to get for years,
Mm.
right? It's a short supply, and then people get desperate. They're desperate, especially after the crash, when people are losing properties. 2006, 7, 8, they were losing their properties, foreclosure, short sales, and whatnot. They need a place to go. So rentals were scarce, and people were dire. They would give a stranger $500 to hold an apartment, and people took advantage of that. So
Yeah.
this is kind of along the same lines. If you set up a Google alert for your property, if you have multiple pieces of land in the family or whatnot, um, if it gets signed for sale, listed for sale, it's gonna pop up on the interwebs.
Right.
It's you know, it's almost inevitable that you could do that. But the other thing you can do, and I noticed this locally, um, our local, where I'm at in Massachusetts, here, Plymouth, Massachusetts, our county registry of deeds, Plymouth Registry of Deeds, has a free monitoring service. So you can look and pay for like a service like Title Lock, but check your local registry of deeds not to be confused with the Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Mhm.
You want to look at the Registry of Deeds to find out if they have a free county monitoring. A lot of them, Scotty, do,
That's
because I
I
did do some
I didn't
research on
realize
that.
that. I did not
Yes,
realize that. That's an awesome service because when you asked me the question of how you prevent this as a seller, I was kind of stumped. I'm like, I don't know, but that's a perfect way to do it.
100%. And
Yeah.
literally you go on to like our registry site, went on the largest, it's right on the front page. Sign up, right? And then you put in your name as it's listed on the right on the deed and the property, and now my email address, um
Hmm.
off to the races. And now I'll get an email if something were to happen. It's another element. I wouldn't rely on it. But I'm curious. I'm going to jump over the chat real quick here and see who we've got. We got Michael X in the house, chiming in from Mesa, Arizona. 109 temp. Woo wee. I hope your AC's working.
Jeez. It's only like
MH08, welcome
60
back.
here today.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's like,
We're both in
guys,
long sleeves here, Jen.
what's that? I know.
We're both in
I
long
wear, well, I wear,
sleeves.
I wear long, I get, temperature control and whatnot in my office here, but it's 61 here in Plymouth. Not in Denver. MHOA, good to see you again. 90. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. That weather's probably coming our way though, Scotty. Um,
Take it.
we get Arnold. Yes, you know what, and guys, if you guys success stories, if you've got houses that you've closed on, I'd love, love, love to hear your success stories because the market is so tight. The news, the media, mainstream media, yeah, they. I don't want to say they're fake news. I hate that term, but they like to sensationalize. They always sensationalize, and nothing's selling, nothing's selling. Stuff is selling. People are selling their homes. People are selling their homes. So tell me your success story. Arnold says he closed on our Greensboro, North Carolina home May 28th. Woohoo! Congratulations. Uh, 2022 build, checked all the boxes. Seller had multiple offers in the first 24 hours of listing. Only paid 5K over asking with some minor repair credits. Woohoo! Fantastic. Oh, you must be so you purchased the home. So if you paid only 5K on multiple offers, that's really good. I think it did really, really good, and it's popping in North Carolina. I have a lot of folks reach out for referrals that are moving into that area. Uh, Ruth, good to see you. Yes, welcome, welcome. Hey, we got Mr. David Matney chiming in from Omaha, Nebraska. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, MJ says, summer finally got here. Yep. Well, Scotty, you think it'll ever get to the Northeast here?
I'm hoping
I don't
so.
know.
I'm really hoping so.
Maybe. I don't know. It was daughter graduated high school on Saturday, and past years all the parents were complaining because it's an outdoor graduation. How hot it was and everything else, and it was literally like 69 degrees on Saturday. I'm not gonna
No,
complain. But
no.
anyways, I wanted to roll into the next segment. Scotty, you wanna stick around, or you wanna
I'll
are
stick
you I
around.
know you
Yeah, I'll stick around for a few and see what's
because I
going
know
on.
I've
See if I can.
got you for just a short period of
Yeah.
time and all that, but I appreciate that. All right, so let's the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is so last couple weeks ago, what was it, last week? I don't know the time was, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I dropped a video about an update because I've been watching to see, Scotty, what is happening with the commission since the
Mm,
new rules were
yes.
were dropped by the National Association of Realtors on August 17th.
Mhm.
Um, part of talking to so many people, checking in with so many agents across the country, my referral partners, and getting feedback on what's happening across the country. Um, I wanted to get into that data and do an updated, a video to educate you guys on like what actually is happening, because of course it didn't roll out the way that NAR intended or the DOJ intended. So I did an updated video on it, did some research, all the things, and an agent, all I'll say is that they're from Florida. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm not, that would be unprofessional, all the things. That's not how I roll. But she sent me an email, unhappy with the content that I produced. And yes, it is, my content is my opinion. It's my prerogative to do so. However, it's very important to me to base it as much fact as possible, and not just go with mainstream. This is just the way we do it, or this is the common, terminology. This is the way things happen in the industry. I really, focus on, from a consumer standpoint for you guys that are watching you, so you can advocate for yourself. So I wanted to bring this up, and Sky, you can chime in. So
Okay.
again, I'm not going to reveal who said this. Doesn't matter. But the fact is this is not made up. This is a legitimate email. All right. So so they said, I recently listened to your video on buying and selling home has changed forever. Update 2025. I have been an exclusive buyer broker since 1998 and licensed in the state of Florida since 1981. It is my opinion that some of your information may not be good advice for buyers. Number one, your suggestion that sellers do not commit upfront with the listing agent to an amount to pay the buyer's agent. For example, my office will not show a property to a buyer without first knowing what the commission amount the seller is offering. They probably meant to put is instead of if, to pay the buyer's agent. If the fee on the buyer agent agreement is more than the seller is offering, the buyer does not have the funds to pay the difference. When appointments are requested, they include a request to know how much the seller has agreed to compensate a buyer's agent prior to showing. Okay. I just love this kind of stuff because this is the kind of stuff that gets my blood boiling, Scotty.
It's not very well written either. I'm gonna
Oh,
be
well,
honest.
and I'll be honest, I doctored it in the sense that like just proper English is super important to me, and it irritates me when there isn't proper English. And so I actually fixed a lot of it. So I don't know what's
All
going
right.
on, but that's here nor there. Here nor there. The biggest here's the thing, and I hear from you guys when you type in your comments about, this is still happening. This is my experience. This is what I ran into, despite the changes. This is what I'm. This is what I know you're up against this, and
Hmm.
so, first off, the biggest problem I have with that statement on the first paragraph there, Scotty, is because I do encourage, Scotty, I do encourage, um, again, from a seller's perspective, to, and every agent's different. My procedure, my recommendation to a home seller is, yes, we have a conversation of what my fee is, and then we have a conversation about the buyer agent fee, and the potential that may be included in an offer. But let's not commit to a fee because we don't know what the buyer's going to offer or even ask for. We don't know what the buyer is going to put on the offer. If you say you'll pay them 2.5% or 3%, and then they submit an offer and they're only looking for 2, you're leaving money on the table. So my feeling is, yes, you have a conversation. I think is my job. It's my obligation to have a conversation with the home seller to say, here are the options. Here are the pros and cons. Here's what could happen or couldn't happen and all the things. What would you like to do? But I do recommend that let's just wait and see what happens. Don't commit to anything. What that does is it puts it puts the responsibility on the buyer's agent and the buyer to have that communication, to have that negotiation skill set. This is the point I'm trying to make on this number one element. And as when you guys are out there interviewing buyer agents, this is the kind of stuff you want to look for. They need to have a skill set. They need to have a negotiation skill set to say, okay, this is how we're going to frame this to the seller. Because at the end of the day, the seller, all as a home seller, the most important thing, Scotty, the most important thing is how much money you're going to walk away with, right?
The net in your pocket at the end of
The
the
net
day.
in the pocket. How it's divvied up, who gets what where, really doesn't matter. It's how much you're going to walk away with, period. How much you're going to walk away with. And offers can be a little complicated if you start adding in on top of buyer agent compensation. You got closing costs. You got, this, that, and the other thing. They're, especially after a home inspection, now they're asking for, the pool to have a pool, have to ask the seller for a pool inspection, have the pool inspected, or a roof, whatever. It can get a little complicated. At the end of the day, it's very simple. What's the seller going to walk away with? It is up to the buyer agent to craft that negotiation. This agent does, and I don't know if this is a thing down in Florida because they are new to buyer agency agreements, but regardless, they shouldn't be new to buyer agency. This person's a buyer broker. They should be able to know how to have that skill set, and if not, you need to work on it. That's my 2 cents on point number one. Scotty, what would you
I
what
mean,
is your opinion on that?
I think it's, yeah. So I guess let me try to
Because you're
say
coming
that,
from a
yeah,
broker standpoint. You're the and for those watching, because a lot of people outside the industry, they don't understand the terminology, right, Scott? Like, so I'm an agent. I have a license. Um, Licensing law does not allow me to open an office. I have to work and hang my license under a broker. A broker is next up on the food chain. They're the ones that have either they own the office or they have a franchise agreement or whatnot. They're the ones, it's their office. They pay the fees for the office. They're the ones that choose who's in the office, all the things. They're the decision makers. They're also the ones that put out all the fires and
and
when
also
there's
on the hook if
troubles and all the
something,
things.
right. So if there's a lawsuit, the broker gets sued. That-
Exactly.
yeah,
So you are not my boss because I mean, I'm a 1099
yeah,
independent contractor. However, if I have an issue that affects the company, I go to you. So you're the one dealing with all the headaches. So I just want to lay that out there,
yeah,
because you're coming from a different perspective than I am. So anyways,
yeah.
continue.
So my 2 cents on this would be, number one is, I think the way you're advising your sellers is absolutely the best way to do it. You have when you're representing the seller, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, and by not, I think by pigeonholing them into picking a commission right up front is foolish. Why would you do that when you don't know what these offers are going to look like and what these buyer agents may or may not be asking for? So I firmly believe that you are doing the right thing for your sellers. And then if you go a little bit deeper here into number one, it says, my office will not show a property to a buyer without first knowing what the commission amount the seller is offering to pay the buyer's agent. That's so is I don't know. Is she saying, like, if they're not offering anything, they're just not going to show the property? Because I believe that's a code of ethics violation if you're a realtor. And then it's so you're now closed this property off to your buyer. Did you run it by them? Did you let them know that they're not offering? There's a whole lot here that I think to put this in writing to somebody is, in my opinion, just crazy.
I couldn't
This is
agree
terrible.
more
Yeah.
because that was the second thing. Thank you for saying that because that was the other point that I wanted to make on this is that when you hire a buyer agent, their job, their obligation, their duty to you is to show you everything that you would like to see that is within that is reasonable. In other words, if your budget is 400,000, you want to go see $1 million property, that's not reasonable. Okay, they're going to show you properties that you're qualified for, that makes sense. You say, I don't want to live in the city, but then you want to drive in the middle of the city and look at a condo. It doesn't make that doesn't make any sense because now we're not taxi drivers, or whatever we call it. It's not, what is it, HGTV? Let's take a look at houses.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not the norm. If a buyer agent spends the time to interview, have a jump on a Zoom, sit down for coffee, whatnot, completely understand what it is that you're looking for, what your non-negotiables are, what your would like to haves are. What are all the important pain points? What are the things that you really need? And that it's important to you. What are you worried about? And so that they can address it. It is their ethical responsibility to show you everything that meets that criteria. Okay, and an agent is in oh my goodness, I get
Mhm.
so in such violation. They don't make the decision on what you see.
Right.
They do not make the decision, nor do I think an agent should be asking what the commission is. I just think there's a reason why the DOJ structured it this way. If the DOJ took it out of MLS, why did the DOJ push NAR to take buyer agent compensation out of the multiple listing service? So that agents wouldn't go through the multiple listing service and say, well, that one's a lower commission, that one's a higher
Right.
commission, I'll show that one. This is the same thing.
It's even
It's even
worse.
it's even
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
So, this is, like I said, this is not an exercise in smashing this agent. This is an exercise in, if you're out looking for a property to buy, if you're interviewing buyer's agents, this is the kind of stuff that you want to ask them. Ask them, ask the agent, are you going to show me everything? The other thing that I would say, Scotty, is just because I am a true believer in, like, in this day and age, you have to advocate for yourself, which means, people are out on Zillow, on Redfin, Realtor.com, and all the different sites anyways. You gotta do that more than ever now. You have to go to your agent and say, well, can I see this one? And if everything looks like it matches on the listing, but for some mysterious reason, the agent comes up with some reason why you can't go see the property, trust your
Red
intuition.
flag. Red flag.
Trust, yep, trust your intuition. The second part of this, which completely baffles me, number two, Florida is a transaction agent state. Now I'm going to reiterate, this is a broker that wrote me this email, a buyer's broker. Florida is a transaction agent state. Therefore, a buyer agency agreement does not necessarily mean a buyer receives representation, only that the buyer will agree to pay an agent. Scotty, if I'm a buyer and I'm signing a buyer agency agreement, and the buyer agent says, I'm looking for 2.5%, but I'm going to ask you for 2.5%, but I don't represent you.
That
What in God's name am I paying you the money for?
that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I am licensed in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, and I don't know the Florida buyer agreement, but I know the Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire agreements. And you are their agent, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to them. And I can't imagine that Florida would be different than.
It is. I researched it. It's not.
Okay.
I researched it.
Shocking.
I looked into it. So when she says that Florida is a transaction state, there is a code. There is the way that real estate agents work in the Florida Association of Realtors. They're treated like transaction agents until, and they have on their buyer agent. This is why it's so important to understand, where you're moving to, understand the contract, make sure you interview. I'm a broken record, interview 3 agents. You want an agent that explains the contract in detail. They don't say, oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. That's an immediate dismissal. See you later. Bye. Because in the Florida buyer agency agreement, there is a checkbox. I have no idea why. You can elect to not have representation.
Ian
So you're just
still
going to
paid the
pay.
buyer agent?
You have to check a box saying that you want representation.
That's like saying, like, paying for a 70-inch television, but saying, I don't actually want the TV. I'm just going to send Best Buy a check for.
Yeah, I want the TV, but I don't want the remote. I'm just going to have the TV and just, like, I don't know, press a button, turn it on, but I can't really do anything with it except it looks a big black screen. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but it's super important to understand the difference, because this kind of nonsense, it's providing value. It's like what we were talking about before we jumped on the live stream, Scotty. It's these folks are paying, what doesn't matter what side table you're on, you're paying good money. You are entitled to value and proper representation. And I'm just, and to not have that because you got an agent says, oh, well, you're signing the buyer agency agreement, but that doesn't necessarily mean. I had a situation earlier today where I had someone from one of my community here, savvy home seller community, reached out for a referral. to a listing agent. They have their property on the market now after, doing their due diligence and watching, my content and taking notes. They realized that, I talk about like the 80% versus 20% agent, like, my opinion is that 80%, and this is 29 years of being in the real estate industry. 80% of the industry is not worth what they're getting paid, about half
Mhm.
what they're getting paid. They're not skilled, they're not professional, they're not looking out for your best interest. Some of it is unscrupulous, some of it is just they just don't know, they're not being guided, they don't have a good broker that has good
Right.
training and all the things. So um, you have to know, because 20%, and to be honest, it's probably a little less, 20%, those are the ones that I've been rubbing elbows with for 29 years and keeping track of and vetting out. Those are the ones that know these contracts, and you gotta know the difference between that 20% agent and that 80% agent. um I lost my train of thought there for a second. I was going somewhere, going down the road, and all of a sudden the road took a left-hand turn. Anyways, I'll come back to it. But anyways,
Hmm.
when you're doing that, you're entitled to that 20% agent. You're entitled to the value that brings, because you're paying for it. And it drives me bonkers.
It's
It just
it's
oh
a
I
bad
know
it's
what
a bad look for all of us. It's a bad look for all of
I
us.
know where I was going, and I apologize, everyone. I apologize. Um, so this home seller reached out to me, Scotty. They had their house on the market now,
Mhm.
and not in Florida, not in Massachusetts, and another state. So she has her house on the market, and she was doing her due diligence. She realized I have an 80% agent. I have an 80% agent. And then she listed all the reasons why. I said, yeah, you got an 80% agent. She's like, I want to cancel my listing contract. I said, you absolutely can. Which, by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, and Scotty, I know you can back me up on this. If your agent, listing agent or buyer's agent, is not fulfilling what they should be doing, if you're watching this, you're watching another video, you say, geez, you know what? My agent's not doing that. You can absolutely cancel your contract. Do not let them tell you that you can't. If they are in violation of what they promise in the contract, and if the contract says that they don't have to represent you, well, you can't really complain that they're not representing you. But if they say, if you are under the pretense that you're being represented, then yes. So she reached out and she says, this agent is not communicating to me. They don't tell me what's going on. They are not informed about the market. Yada yada. The list was long. She tried canceling the listing. She sent an email to the agent. Agent pushed back. The agent responded saying that they would cancel it, but there are fees that they have to be reimbursed for. She went into her listing contract. There is no mention of fees in the listing contract. Zero. She pushed, and I didn't coach her per se. I connected her with a 20% agent, and they had a conversation. But what I did tell her is that, you know what, reach out to a real estate attorney, and just get a little bit of oomph in the game, because they're bullying you, and that's what will happen. That's what will happen. You got to stand up for what is right. And finally, they did cave. They did cave and whatnot, because you know what, you're tied into a listing that's going to keep your house on the market for another 4 months. Scotty, 4 months from now, you're heading into the holidays.
Right.
Now you're in trouble. Depending on where you are, right? Depending on if
Sure.
Florida market is, their busy markets heading into the holidays. November to, was it November to March, something like that. October to March is when they're busy. But it's one of those things where you don't let these agents bully you. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. No. And if they do try to bully you, call their broker. I mean, I've had
Mm-hmm.
to field phone calls like that over the years, and usually the broker is a little bit outside of the situation, so they can look at it from a different perspective. But typically, it's you release them back to what they to the wild, let them find somebody else that's a better fit, and move on. So yeah, I would say, but you got to advocate for yourself too.
Yep.
And if they do try to hit you with the fees thing, I'm glad you said that it wasn't in the contract anywhere. Even when it's in the contract, it's somewhat tough to enforce.
It
I've seen that
really is.
as
And and
well.
and I
But
told her, I says, you know what? I said, the fact that they push back tells you right there that they're an 80% office. Because I
yeah,
know that from your perspective, and I mean, 29 years, of course, I've had people that, you know, we thought we clicked and then we didn't. And they end up being somebody that I don't really want to work with. Usually, if the seller or buyer doesn't want to work with me, it's mutual. It's mutual,
Right.
and that's fine. Um, it doesn't behoove me to force somebody to work with me because now they're gonna go out and post negative social media stuff and all the things like why? So
Right.
as a 20% agent, I just, you know what, if somebody's like, Jen, I am not happy, I don't really want to work with you, and I'm like, you know what, that is good for me too. See ya. Release, gone, off you go. You know, it's not that I don't want the business, but I don't want to work with people that don't want to work with me.
Right.
An 80% agent will drag you through the mud, you know, to get the money because that's all they care about is the money. That's all they care about, you know. And I know you're the same way, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
why I hang my license with you and why I work with you because you have the same value system, Scott. You know,
What
you have the same exact value system.
what I will say to add one more thing that though is I have had people call in the past that weren't happy with their agent, but they weren't necessarily telling the truth about what was going on during the listing, and the agent was fulfilling their duty, busting their butt for them. They just weren't happy with the results because maybe they might have asked for too much money for the house. The listing agent told them we shouldn't do that. So that's a whole different story. But if you
Well,
got an 80% agent, it's a different
and
story.
that falls into the category of like the feelings mutual because if I find out
Yeah.
that someone was lying to me or you know or whatever, you know, if it's you know, if I wasn't giving good information, whatever, you know, then you know it can be on either side of the table for sure. You know, sometimes I've had people that are just like, wow, you are not what I thought you were.
I
It's
think we've
not
all had that
always,
experience.
yeah, it's not always the agent. It's
Yeah.
called the human condition.
Hmm.
Um, we got PJ. PJ says Erie, Pennsylvania here. Had a weird spam caller accent. Asked if I wanted to sell my home. Then asked if I had any other property I wanted to sell. Scary. Here we don't have a county program for titles. Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. So what I would recommend I mean, you could look into like a title lock situation, you know, and you know, it costs money to sign up for some of this stuff, which I, you know, I'm if it's free, it's for me. I don't like to. I'm a pretty frugal person when it comes to that stuff. What I would recommend, PJ, is and for anybody else that if you don't have a county program, a lot of counties, you know, you should be able to access the registry of deeds online and maybe put it on your checklist like once a month or so every 2 months or something. Just go on to the registry of deeds and just take a look at your see what's going on there, you know, see if there's any filings um as far as that's concerned. Do you have any other suggestions on that
From
there, Scott?
from I as from the consumer standpoint, it's difficult. Like if your county doesn't have a title lock program or something like that, that really is difficult. Jen, from our standpoint though, from a brokerage level, and this communication is going to go out this week, uh, I'm going to implement a rule that says you are no longer allowed to list a property without personally meeting these people in person to review the property in person, or a Zoom call, or
Zoom call.
some sort of other approved virtual, to actually be able to see the person that you're speaking to on the other side of the table, because I don't know how else to phrase
100%.
it. You know, you can get, because even if you ask for a license, they can furnish someone's fake driver's license. I think one of those articles said that, but it'd be really difficult. I mean, I guess AI is pretty crazy these days, but I think it would be really difficult to be someone else on a Zoom call, or definitely not in person. So that's what we're going to
That's
be doing from a brokerage level.
good.
Um, Hopefully, some other brokers are taking steps to help mitigate this as well. But that's what we're going to be doing.
I think that's, I mean, that, to be honest, I do that just from a relational standpoint. You know, I want to meet the people. I want to see who they are. That's how I figure out whether I'm a good match with them, and they're a good match for me. You know, and
Right.
really get to see who they are. Um, we got Leslie jumping on late. That's okay. Welcome to the show. Love to hang out here. Pflugerville. Oh, thank you very much, Pflugerville. Dylan Panthers. I love that Friday Night Lights show and the movie and all the things. I actually went to Pflugerville when I went down to visit my brother last year, and
Where is Pflugerville in
in
the?
just outside of Austin,
Okay.
Texas. Yeah, and I actually went by the stadium and all the things. It was like standing right where they filmed the show. It was very cool.
Cool.
Anyways, I digress. Gregor's Well says, and only booked a few showings. Any news of a market change? Yeah, we're gonna get to actually in 2 seconds here. I'm gonna get to um some things on the market, some updates on the market, because the market is definitely changed. It actually looks like these are out of order. I don't know. It says, "Hey Jen, my house is currently on the market in South Shore in Massachusetts. Your backyard. We priced it right, clean, well maintained. We had a decent open house last weekend with only one offer." So here, the thing that I'm seeing, in terms of and Scotty, you can chime in on this as well, but just in general, it's there's definitely a shift, and I think the shift with the buyers is definitely, it's not, we still have a lack of inventory, severe lack of inventory here. Um, it's the economic uncertainty. There's a
Hmm.
lot of economic factors outside of the housing market that are influencing home buyers and causing them to press the pause button. And I think that the thing that I would encourage you to do is talk to your agent to find out what the average or the median, not the average, but the median time to offer is in your town. Is it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? You might be surprised to find out that it's 30 days.
I can.
And you have
I
it in your
can't speak.
mind, that you're like, oh, it's a South Shore, it's Massachusetts, everything's going to sell in 2 days or a week. And then you find out that the data shows that it's actually a month. But what were you going to say, Scott?
I can't speak to. I don't know exactly where it is, I can't speak to specifically the South Shore. But in Eastern Massachusetts, I can tell you that the average days to offer is 32 days. It's
There you
for the
go.
last 12 months. It's been 32 days. So, um, obviously, it's community specific, but that is the average days to offer in Eastern Massachusetts.
Very good. The other thing too is that, your other question about only booking a few showings. Um, the service that we see a lot here, and I know that other states use it. I know my friend Jackie down in Jersey uses it as well as Showing Time. Showing Time's a service; it's a national company, but if your agent's using that showing tracking service can give you some data on how many showings, the average number of showings that are being booked, in a particular town. Just give you extra. I'm a big fan of data. Rely on the data, not on the feeling.
Showing
Um,
time owned by our good friends at Zillow.
Zillow. Oh, Zillow's trying to buy everything, own everything, do everything. Trust no one. Trust no one. Leslie says, exactly. Thank you for pointing out that a specific amount or percent does not need to be disclosed, just that you will participate in the fee. Be open to any offers and negotiate from there. When an agent calls asking for, and honestly, I have not many. When I put a listing on the market these days, I don't really get hardly any people asking, because the agents our Massachusetts form have the offer compensation built right into the offer form, just right in there. But when they do, I simply say the seller is entertaining all terms, all offers, and all terms. Period. And that's it. That's all they need to know, right? And just to let them know that seller's not gonna be a stick in the mud, but anything is negotiable. Um, Here we go. Gregor says, Grant, it's only been on the market for a week, but interested in your 2 cents on any changes in the market in the area. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the big thing is adjusting your expectations as far as changes in our South Shore / Massachusetts area. Um, but specifically on the South Shore, adjust your expectations on number of offers and the amount over asking. So that is shrinking because of the fact that things are changing. Interest rates are much higher, but it's also, I think, buyers, because they're being more cautious, they're being more careful, and they're not just pulling the trigger and operating out of emotion and offering these super high offers. So I think that's the big thing. Would you concur on that, Scott?
Totally, totally agree. We were just discussing this today in our office meeting about the fact that most things are still moving fairly quickly, but you're not seeing 15, 20, 25 offers on properties. So
Which
one offer, if
honestly,
it's a strong offer, you know,
well, two schools of thought on that. Number one, If you're selling a house, you only need one buyer.
That's right.
Number one.
That's right.
Number two, I think it's good for the market. I think it's good for the market. I think it's good for buyers to not have to be like beat up so bad that they got to compete against all these stinking offers. Um, it's just it's not a bad thing.
No, a
Uh,
balanced market is good for all the parties involved.
yes, sir. Joe Perka, he's a good friend of mine. Joe Perka out in Claremont, California, comes on. He's a regular guest on my show. Long live the 20% agents. One of Joe's a great agent. He handles all my Claremont and all the surrounding areas out there. He's an awesome guy, awesome agent. Um, we got another Massachusetts. A lot of Massachusetts people on. Usually don't have this many, Scott. You must have brought them in. Um, Peter says hi from Norfolk County, Massachusetts. 82 watching, like 21 thumbs up. Show some love for our host Jen and Scott. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Peter.
Appreciate that. Grace says you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Well, if you're game, Scotty, I'm gonna dig into. Let's see here. If I can. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, hold on one second here. I might have to. Did I queue this up for two people? I might have to jump you on here. Sorry,
That's
guys. I have. Let's see. Is this the one? All right, give me. I'm just gonna add there, because I didn't know how long. I apologize, guys. I didn't know how long Scotty was gonna be on here for, so I'm just gonna add him in here. Jeepers creepers, thinking on the fly. This is the name of the game. There we go. I am
cool.
glad that God gifted me with technology skills. There we go. There we go. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, as I used to say to my kids. So this article came out on Housing Wire. Housing Wire did did an analysis. This was the 9th, which was yesterday. Will the 2025 housing market crash like 2008? I have been hearing this a ton, Scotty. A ton. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
as well. Everybody's
Oh, yeah.
thinking that this is exactly what happened back in 2008. This is what's happening now. This is what's going to happen. This is why buyers are pulling back, because they're waiting for the crash. And although, I have said that that's not necessarily the case, for many reasons, this kind of goes into a different perspective. This is comparing the risks then and now. This is the 2025 housing market is flashing warning signs, which is why people are freaking out. Reminiscent of 2008. Rising household debt burdens, rising inflation, persistent inflation, home prices that are outpacing incomes. Unlike the pre-2008 era, stricter lending standards and robust regulations have kept mortgage delinquency rates low, significantly lowering the odds of a catastrophic collapse. Yet, the growing share of income devoted to debt payments signals a need for heightened oversight and proactive measures to prevent financial strain from destabilizing the housing market. This is something that is, yes, the mortgage situation was different, right? But this increasing debt, it can't be ignored. It absolutely can't be ignored, right? So it says the housing market risks. It says there are several, and I found this was interesting. There are several economic indicators that are signal increasing risks in the 2025 housing market. Debt to income ratios. If you're getting a mortgage, you've heard that DTI. It's the relationship to how much you owe versus how much is going out versus how much is coming in. This is a primary concern. 2008, the DTI ratios averaged 43%, leaving borrowers vulnerable to payment shocks. So, in other words, if you were on the cusp of you were cutting it tight from with your mortgage payment, and then all of a sudden you had an adjustable rate mortgage that went up, and now that mortgage payment is higher than what you anticipated. Now there's no more room to stretch. You're at critical mass, and that's how people got into trouble and foreclosures went through the roof. Um, it says that when risky adjustable rate mortgages, as values plummeted, that's the key right there. It says post crisis reforms lowered the average to 35.5% by 2015, just under the 36% considered a healthy benchmark. So 36% is considered a healthy benchmark for financial stability. Today, it's at 40.5%. Indicates that more than half of a household's disposable income goes toward debt service. It says that hazard insurance, or homeowners insurance, driven by escalating climate related events, wildfires, hurricanes, hailstorms, etc., is placing a heavy burden. And it says from 2020 to 2023, home insurance has risen 33%, and dramatically outpacing wage growth and inflation. The national average insurance premium increased 8%, but some regions are hit harder. Louisiana is the worst. They led the nation with a 27% spike. Some of the areas in Louisiana, some of the counties, the towns in Louisiana went up like 40%, Scotty. Crazy.
I know. I see that. I see Louisiana and California. I think Florida's way up there too. Florida,
100%,
yeah.
100%. But this next thing, it says this is the other thing that is getting some press, but is an indirect relation to the housing market. It says consumer debt stress is fueling additional risks in the 2025 housing market. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, credit card delinquency, 60 days or past 60 plus days past due, reached 3.5% in 2024, up from 2.8% in 2022. Auto loans delinquencies hit 2%, and student loans delinquencies 90 plus days soared to 20%, a level unseen since 2012. Of course, a lot of that was the changes with the administration and how they're handling student loans.
So am I reading that correctly? That 20% of student loans are 90 days past due? Is that how
Yeah,
I'm reading this?
yes,
Wow. Okay.
that's a lot.
That's very,
That
yeah. That's a real lot.
this this is why the number of this is why baby boomers have surpassed millennials as a percentage of first-time homebuyers. They're not the first-time home buyers. Period. First-time home buyers have always been like 40 to 45% of the market, right? The
Mhm.
first-time home buyers have always been the largest chunk of the market. They are now the smallest chunk of the market because largely because of debt. They can't get their foot in the door. Makes they can't afford these prices. Income is not keeping up with
Their
uh
student loan is a
yeah,
mortgage payment.
yep, exactly. It says consumer debt write-offs surged 42% to $110 billion in 2024, reflecting growing financial strain. Total household debt at $18 trillion in 2024. These pressures threaten to spill over mortgage payments, especially for high DTI households. And also the average FICOs are trending downward, which may lead to an indicator that borrower credit worthiness is also declining. This concerns me, Scotty, because 2008, 2007, 2008, the fallout from that was a tightening, right? There was a
Mhm.
tightening in the mortgage industry, um, because actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna go on to say that because I think this is what this next paragraph goes into. It says several catalysts that could spark a housing market correction in 2025 market. Mortgage rates, which reached 6.72% in December, are projected to stabilize. They could pose a risk for high loan to value borrowers who have minimal home equity. This interest rate environment virtually eliminates refinancing, a solution for these borrowers to reduce their housing payment or debt consolidation. Non mortgage debt with credit card delinquencies at 3.5%, et cetera, threatens mortgage payment capacity. Um, this actually, that wasn't what I wanted to get into. It was this next column. It basically talks about why it's different, and the reason it's different is because of the fact that the federal government instituted restrictions and tightening of loan requirements, lending requirements.
And that's probably an understatement. It was a severe tightening on the restrictions because there was no restrictions. It was,
There was no, absolutely
yeah.
no. Yeah, it says post 2008 reforms, including Dodd Frank's risk retention rules and a 3.7 million unit housing shortage compared to the 1.5 million unit surplus in 2008, further increased market resilience, reduced significant market crashed, persistent affordability challenges with median home prices 4.2 times median income underscore the need for vigilance. So the thing that concerns me, Scott, is that with this increased debt, um, and the FICO scores trending downward, uh, do you think we're at a risk for the mortgage companies changing, evolving? Mortgage companies need they're businesses. They're not making mortgages for their own benefit, right?
Mhm.
They're not making mortgages for the buyer's benefit. They want to make
No.
money, and the only way they make money is to write more loans. And if they're not writing loans, they're going out of business. So do we start seeing some loosening of credit guidelines, loosening of lending guidelines? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? To get people, yes, get people in homes, but if they have to loosen the guidelines on an already stretched budget, should you even be buying a house in the first place?
No. So the simple answer is no. So we actually do have a mortgage brokerage. So I do see some of the credit scores coming through, and the so the debt to income ratio is really what frightens me because consistently we're seeing people come through like right up against the limit of that DTI. And I believe with FHA it's 50% or 49.9% debt to income ratio, which means for every dollar you make, 50 cents is out the door to debt that you owe. And there's a lot of borrowers right now that are right up against that threshold. So if something goes wrong or something happens to that home, or you need to put a new heating system in the middle of the winter, and there's not a lot of margin of error there. So
Mm-mm.
that definitely concerns me. What I will say though is, and I think it probably touches it in this article here, is just the inventory numbers. There is no inventory, at least here in Massachusetts. And please don't quote me on this exactly, but I think in the summer of 2008 ish, there was about 40,000 homes for sale in Massachusetts, and I think this at this time right now there's like 11,000 homes for sale. So there's not the surplus of inventory out there, and the declining prices. The prices are still appreciating here in Eastern
Yep.
Massachusetts. Um, so will it be a correction? Possibly. Will there be a crash like there was in 2008? I don't foresee that, but I guess you never really know.
Yeah, I don't, the thing is I guess, the inventory is going to start accumulating. I mean, we're still, in the Northeast areas, certain pockets, and I talk about that on the live streams, get into that data specifically what's happening. And I can see, I've been watching over the last months, the push, and it's starting in Texas and Texas, Florida, the southern states, spread to the southern, certain parts of California. And it is starting to spread, across the country as buyers are kind of putting the brakes on out of necessity because they can't, they're having a hard time affording anything, and, I think that, adding more, I guess the question is that if you add more inventory, yes, that'll give more options to buyers, but is that the only thing that's gonna, that is the problem? And the answer is I don't think so. I don't, you know, there's not enough, there's not enough finances to support, even if enough entry level homes came on the market. Yes, some need will be satisfied, but as we're seeing in like Texas and in Florida and those states, Arizona, where the inventory is starting to pile up, the inventory is, they're not in a super strong buyer's market. The data does not support. They are absolutely starting to shift. They are absolutely in certain towns. Buyers have more leverage than others, and they're they're definitely flipping. They're in the process of flipping, um, but adding more inventory, even then, you would think that the buyers would come out of the woodwork, and they're not because of this, because of the debt strain. You know, I I don't know how. Well, actually, this article goes into, because it really does focus, and I wanted to talk about this article. I talk a lot about every week about the inventory and different things that are happening with prices. But this week I wanted to kind of focus more on the financial side
Mhm.
because of the fact that I think that gets ignored. It hasn't been talked about enough. And it says, oh, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong thing here. Let's try this again here. Let's try this one. There we go. As a solution to stabilize the market, 2025 market, where do we go from here? It says to prevent a housing market correction in 2025, stakeholders must address the rising debt to income ratios, consumer debt stress, and regional imbalances through targeted practical measures. Boy, that sounds so technical. In other words, how do you buy a house when you don't have enough money? Plain and simple.
Yeah.
The following solutions, informed by current trends and past successes, aim to support borrowers, stabilize markets, and promote resilience. So they give a couple examples, like enhance the loan modification programs. The HAMP program, homeowners, what is home? Um, oh gosh, I'm drawing a complete blank on what that stands for. The it was during the great financial crisis. It'll come to me. They basically rewrote the note and made it, to where it was almost like an adjustable rate mortgage, and allows you to not lose the house and get your payments down a little bit, get you caught up and all the things, just so you can catch your breath. Um,
I'm blanking on it too.
it'll come to me. Conduct preemptive portfolio analysis, promote stable mortgage rates, enhance consumer financial education, support debt consolidation efforts. The one thing that I don't see here, Scotty, we need to have higher incomes and people need to spend less money on stuff they don't need.
Frivolous items. I agree.
I might, I kind
Yeah.
of talk about this a lot. And not to sound like back in my day, but the fact is like, you have, and I know you've seen this, I have had in the past where I've had first time home buyer say that they want to buy a house, but they just can't make the numbers work and all the things. And they're pulling up to the office in like a 1-year-old car, 2-year-old car. That's like, and I said, how much is the car payment? Oh, it's $700. $700? Yeah, well, that's just what they cost. Not in every car.
Right.
Try to teach my kids, if you want something bad enough, you have to make sacrifices.
Sure.
If you want to own a home, it requires sacrifice. I think as a society, we've lost our way on how to make sacrifices. Not that that's enough. That is not enough all the time. And I don't want to presume that that's all that needs to be done. Right? That would be short-sighted to say that that's all that needs to happen. But I do think that it's like somebody going to getting gastro bypass or a bypass surgery, right? They get the gastro bypass, but then they don't change their eating habits. What's the point?
Yeah.
The only
Right.
way this works is if you change your lifestyle. Then you can do the thing with losing the weight, keeping the weight off, and healthier lifestyle. You feel better, all the things.
Right.
Short term changes just so you can get your foot in the door, but then you go back to your lifestyle. That I think is largely the thing that we've got going on that's against us in society as a whole. I don't know. Get all
Yeah.
philosophical, but that's my approach.
We live
You
in an
know,
instant gratification society, and everybody wants everything right away. They don't want to, like you said, make sacrifices or wait or all that.
Sandra,
Yeah.
much love to you. That's home affordability modification program. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
There you go. Thanks,
Yes,
Sandra.
that's what we were looking for. That is what we were looking for. So, yeah. So I don't. it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation. I think that I mean, what are your final thoughts on how even if inflation numbers go down,
Mhm.
even if interest rates. I mean, to get the interest rates down, we've got to get the the bond market. We've got to get investors feeling good about the market to get those bond rates down, to get the T bills, which will affect the mortgage rates. But I don't see that happening, right? Um,
Mhm.
Prices are going to come down in certain areas, but they're not going to plummet. They're not going to plummet because there is going to be that group of buyers that continues to buy. It's not like everybody's going to have the rug pulled out from underneath them, and no one can afford a house anymore, right? So it's going to be interesting. What are your final thoughts here?
My
Uh,
final thoughts are that I feel pretty confident that you will not see a major plummet in probably any area of the country, especially Eastern Massachusetts. But I don't think you're going to see it really in any part of the country. You might see a minor pullback here and there, Florida, Texas, like you said, California. But overall, I think it's going to be fairly steady. I think that I have a little bit of confidence that rates will come down a bit. We're not going to see twos and threes again,
sure.
but I think you might see it in the fives within the next year,
You think so?
which would help. I think so. I think Trump is going to do his best, whether you like him or not. I think he's going to do his best. I think that might be his next goal is to get the interest rates down so that he can say he got the interest rates down.
So you know what? You just bring up a very, very, very good point, and I just want to briefly touch on that. And this is again, regardless of who you voted for, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. This is the
Yeah.
administration that we have. When an administration reaches starts to approach the halfway point, they do not, especially Trump, is not going to want his legacy to be a failed housing market. Not
Right.
when the housing market has is the largest gross domestic product in the country. It is what carries our economy.
And
The amount
he
of
prides himself on housing and real estate.
He is a real estate guy.
Right.
He will not let. I find it hard to believe that he would let the housing market crumble. He's too proud for that. He's too proud. And whatever he's got up his sleeves, who the heck knows? He'll share that with us eventually. We'll find out or whatever. But I agree. I think that there will be things that will happen. Um, what we don't know yet, but I just don't. I think that there will be things that will be put in place that will prevent an all-out crash, an all-out plummet. Um, is he going to save the housing market? I don't think there's anybody that can. I think this is going to take, you know, it took us, um, you know, it was 2000. The great financial crisis is where this started, right? The great financial crisis is when the builders put their brakes on because they got burned. They stopped building. And then we had not enough inventory to keep up with the number of new buyers coming in, and it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. And then you know, we had one event after another, and then COVID, which gobbled up all of the existing inventory. We were in a seller's market before COVID, and then it got significantly worse. It's going to take a long time, a decade. It's going to take a long time, years, to get us to more of a level market. My good friend Jackie, who's down in New Jersey, uh, North Jersey, has updating me on a regular basis that Netflix is building their studio down there. It's being called the Hollywood of the East. So it's going to have Hollywood of the West, L.A., Hollywood of the East, New Jersey,
Hmm.
and employ about 1,500 people. All those people need a place to live.
Right.
Their market's already tight. Then they're
Yeah.
going to spill over into neighboring Connecticut and New York and so forth, and that's going to make it even more difficult to keep up with pace of how to digging us out of this hole. And that's just one example, right? With all these, everything that's happening, they want to bring manufacturing and create more manufacturing jobs and all this industry, which is great. But if you're building these industries out in the middle of nowhere, you've got to build houses for people to live in.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. We will have to continue the conversation another day, another time. But Scotty, thanks for jumping on and sharing.
Thank you.
I'm thank you for staying. I know you said that you were on a tight time schedule and that you weren't sure about being able to how long you're gonna be able to stay, but I super appreciate you giving me your 2 cents and all your
No,
time and all the things. So thank you for that. And
I appreciate you having me. I love what you're doing here with your community. This is awesome, Jen. This is
I
really
got a
great stuff.
I got a great I'm the folks and everything. Thank you to everybody on the chat and all the things. Um, you know, we got oh, Angie coming at the end, picking up on the Angie's here every week. Sorry I missed the beginning. No worries, no worries. And one final comment is rates go down a decent amount, then and home prices go up. Yes, they will. That's the big concern. If all of a sudden rates do go down to like 5%, 5.5%, a lot of people are going to get off. They're going to unclick that pause button
Mhm.
and they're going to jump back on the market. Now there's going to be more competition. Push the rates up. And Arthur, we're going to end on that note. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you. It makes me thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You're very welcome, Sandra. Thank you guys all for being here. I love talking. This is my favorite day of the week. I love jumping on these live streams, talking to you guys, and answering your questions and all your concerns. Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you guys, everybody in the chat. And listen, look out for your neighbor. Check in on your neighbor. Be kind. And as I always say, before you judge, if someone doesn't agree with you, you have a different point of view, before you judge, seek to understand. Ask questions, try to see it from their point of view. You don't have to see it from the same point of view. That's okay. Just try to understand where they're coming from. You might be surprised that you're closer than you realize. Food for thought. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And until then, everybody have a wonderful week. Be good. Jam it out.